Good morning. I'm Canon Dina van Klaveren. I serve as the Canon for Development and Stewardship in the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland, and I'm so delighted to have some time with you, Josh. Would you introduce yourself?
I'm Joshua Messick. I'm the Executive Director of the Baltimore International Seafarers Center, Port Chaplain for the Port of Baltimore.
So, Seafarers Ministry is one of those ministries in the Bishop's Appeal that receives support each year from those who make donations and contributions. And so it's one of 11 ministries in the Bishop's Appeal, and it's really nice to be on site today with you and learn more.
Glad you're here.
Thank you. Josh, many of us are not aware of the magnitude of what goes on here with the shipping industry in the Port of Baltimore and really around the world. Not as aware as you are, for sure. So can you give us an idea of how many ships and how many seafarers come through the Port of Baltimore and how that impacts our local economy?
So the Port of Baltimore is the 10th largest port in terms of amount of cargo handled, the cost of that cargo, everything that comes through in the country. $80 billion of cargoes handled annually. They're seeing over 2,000 ships come in. And on board each of those ships is, on average, maybe 20, 22 seafarers, as many as 30. So on average, maybe 50,000 seafarers come through the Port of Baltimore annually, if I got my numbers right, and I did.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of ships.
Mm-hmm.
From what countries or nations are seafarers most likely to come?
Most of our seafarers are Filipino. I'd say maybe 60%. Close second is Indian. We do have Chinese seafarers, but frequently they're detained on board. They don't have detained just means they can't get off the ship. They don't have a visa or a shore pass. We also see lots of Eastern Europeans, so Ukrainians, Russians. I've had people from Moldova, Montenegro, and all over the place. Not so much from South America, which is interesting, but more seafarers are coming from Africa now. That's a new kind of emerging market for the seafaring community.
And the work that you're doing here, this ministry is a long ministry. People have been doing this not only in Baltimore, but worldwide. Can you give us a little sense of the history of ministry with seafarers that we might not already know about?
So the Seafarers Center here in Baltimore has been here for just over 30 years now. Not in this location, but has been working in the port for 30 years. Ministry to seafarers has been going on in an organized way for about 200 years now. If you've seen Moby Dick, you might remember the little schoolmarm looking gal handing out Bibles to the sailors as they're getting on the whaling ship. That's kind of how it started, was this evangelism, this wanting to sort of clean up the docks, I guess, by bringing them Christ, and it morphed into actually providing services for seafarers and not just Bibles, taking care of their needs, both spiritual and secular.
Are there other organizations in Baltimore doing this with seafarers?
There's the Apostleship of the Sea. That's the Catholic group. They're smaller. It's one guy and a volunteer or two. They handle a couple of the terminals. We work really closely with them because that's what this is all about. We can do better together.
Great, great. So what do you hear from your counterparts in seafarers ministry in the Middle East right now?
It is incredibly difficult, as you might imagine. There are mission to seafarers groups in the UAE, Bahrain, Cyprus. There's a center in Aqaba in Jordan. They are still visiting ships as often as they can, as safely as they can. They're dealing with crew abandonments. They're dealing with, as a result, crews that don't have food or water, so they're doing emergency deliveries of food and water to ships. There have been at least a dozen seafarers that have been killed so far in this conflict, and 20,000 stranded, which is incredible. Some ships have been sunk, but the seafarers are just sort of stuck in the middle of it all.
What do you mean crew abandonment?
When sometimes less scrupulous ship owners will decide it's not worth holding on to a ship. It costs more for them to keep and maintain a ship and crew than it does to just
Start all over.
forego the ship, and so they will abandon the vessel and the crew on board, and so they just end up stranded
Without the food and water.
without food,
Running out
without
of
water,
resources.
running out of fuel. That happens globally frequently. We've had ships here in Baltimore that have been abandoned, and the crew will stay here for a year or more. I think there's a fella off the coast of Africa that's been on board for years because he thinks if he leaves the ship, he'll forfeit any right to pay, which is right to a point. But he will get off, swim ashore, go buy supplies, swim back, and he's the last guy left on this ship.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And so what are the protections for seafarers since they're an international work crew?
There is the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006. That's an international they call it the Seafarers Bill of Rights. It's overseen by a tripartite group of seafarers, ship owners, and flag states. So the countries that ship owners sign on to say we'll follow your laws of the sea in addition to the international laws. We'll register our vessels with you as a country. All three of those groups have to have a majority agreement to amend the MLC. So that provides provisions for a standard, a basis for seafarer care, but it only goes so far. One of the more recent amendments was on. You may have no interest in this whatsoever, but one of the
I might.
you
I
might,
might. Keep
you
going.
might. One of the amendments was on internet on board. They're now required to have internet on board every vessel, but it does not say the quality of the internet or who needs to pay for it. So frequently ship owners are saying, we're giving you the equivalent of dial-up in 2026 and you have to pay for the privileged seafarers. And that's just not kosher.
And that's how they're communicating with their families is through that internet. So you said that 12 seafarers have died as a result of the war in Iran. So that's just in the last month and a week or so. How is, in other ways as well, how are seafarers and their families being impacted by the war?
Well, those that have been abandoned are no longer being paid, and so their families are struggling. Frequently, people go to sea because that's their only option. There are no jobs where they live, and they become seafarers because that's what is available. They're the sole supporters of their families, and so if they are not being paid, then their families suffer. Filipino seafarers are required to remit 90% of their pay. They have to send it home to their families in the Philippines, and so that money's just not there anymore.
Okay. So folks here on the ground in Maryland, what might we do to express our care, to advocate, to support this ministry and seafarers?
Education is the number one thing. So far, seafarers are so frequently unseen, unrecognized until something goes wrong, and then they tend to be blamed, which is unfortunate. But learning about how this vulnerable population keeps our world going is huge. The more people know about seafarers and what they go through and what they mean for us without us even knowing it, the more people see that, the better their quality of life is. Because the more the public is aware, the more the spotlight is on seafarers, the more can be done for them. So I spend a lot of time advocating for seafarers' rights internationally to help more people become aware. The second would be to absolutely pray for the men and women who are stuck on these ships, because it's like if you went to work and all of a sudden you couldn't get home, you were just stuck in your office. That's how it is for them. They can't go anywhere, and it's through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
our international affiliate, the Mission to Seafarers, are the ones that have people on the ground there. We support them by holding them up in prayer and advising from afar, which is pretty much useless when you're actually the one there on the ship. But being in solidarity with them means a lot.
Are the names of those that have died in this war, the seafarers, are those released publicly or not available?
Probably not available, but I have not looked to see. I should probably do that before take two.
We can also pray for them, for those that have died as a result of violence. Yeah, we can include them that way. So I know, including my mother in this one, and many folks I know, folks crochet and knit scarves and hats for seafarers. How are these distributed?
We tend to give those away during our Christmas at Sea program. So we start that right after Thanksgiving, and we take care packs to the vessels and deliver them right to the seafarers until we run out. So that can be Valentine's Day. We also have some on hand to give out during the year because often seafarers are leaving here and going somewhere cold, and sometimes the ships are not well-founded. The crew members don't have what they need to stay warm, and so they'll request hats or scarves or winter coats, stuff like that. We don't keep winter coats on hand because we don't get requests specifically for them all that often. It's easier to go out and find what they need specifically then. But we will always take candy. We'll always take baked goods, whatever we can to say, here's something we can bring to you. Here's something that shows that someone's thinking about you.
That's great. How many staff and volunteers does it take to do all this?
I'm the only full-time person. We have 3 hourly, regular kind of weekday folks that visit ships. We have 1 evening weekend person, and then maybe not a whole lot of regular volunteers, maybe 5 or so. It's harder to have that kind of commitment to be able to go out regularly, to want to be in the port and visiting ships. And so we have folks on staff more that can do that regularly, which is not great to say when you're looking for volunteers, but here we are.
You need to have consistency. You need to have consistency and care.
We need that consistency because it's so important that we're there when we're needed. And we really, a lot of what I do is building up the center as a whole so that we can do more than just I could on my own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And volunteers are great, but when they want to go on a vacation or do something else, you're going to need
We need to pick up the slack,
and so I know that in the past, so your staff and volunteers are driving vans over to the port, wearing the brightly colored safety gear and hard hats, and then bringing folks out to go shop or to get medical attention or whatever it is that folks need. And that happens every day?
Every day. I've got folks out in the port right now.
Okay.
I've got 2 folks out, 1 hourly ship visitor who is worth his weight in gold, and I have a Ukrainian Lutheran chaplain that goes out. And we tend to try to get him to the Eastern Europeans. He speaks Russian and Ukrainian and Polish, and so he goes a long way.
That's really great. That's really great. Well, I know that you have a big event coming up. I think it's on the 22nd of April. Do you want to tell us about it in case folks are interested?
Yeah, that's our annual harbor cruise. It leaves from the finger piers in the inner harbor, goes about to where the Key Bridge was, and back. It's a 2-hour tour, catered, really a lot of fun.
I've been 2 years ago, and the crab dip was delicious.
Always have crab dip.
And the desserts were really good, and the people were great. There were all these folks that were interested in seafarers and learning more. So I learned a lot about the economy and the behind-the-scenes work of the port from the water, which was really nice to be able to look and start to name some of these places where the ships come in. Can you tell us what those places are called?
Terminals. So we have maybe there's over 30 berths in the Port of Baltimore, which is where one ship parks.
Takes a berth.
And so they are berthed within a terminal. So different terminals handle different kinds of cargo. And so each one tends to have one or two things that they focus on. So the cruise is a tour of the working port of Baltimore from the water. You get to see how big these ships actually are, and marvel at the fact that they're operated by 15 to 25 people, and just sort of see what drives the economy locally and globally.
It was nice to be oriented to the city in a new way, because I think about driving and how to get to various points, but on the water, you're just encircled by it. It was really great.
Yeah,
So what are some of the names of those terminals that might sound familiar from driving around the port?
So Dundalk Marine Terminal and Seagirt Marine Terminal are the two big ones. Dundalk is the number one ro-ro terminal, which is short for roll-on, roll-off. Anything that has wheels, cars, or farm equipment comes on and off of those. Baltimore is consistently top in the nation for ro-ros and vehicles. Seagirt is the only container terminal, so the big shipping containers you see on trucks, that's the only terminal that handles those right now. They're building a new one on Sparrows Point at Trade Point Atlantic, so where Bethlehem Steel used to be. That will take a lifetime or less. And let's see what else. There's Bay Coal in Curtis Bay. Baltimore is, for better or worse, number one in the country for exporting coal, which kept Europe powered when Russia first invaded Ukraine. One of the coal ships leaving Baltimore can power a moderate-sized European city for a month. And we have at least 3 a day come out of here. Other than that, there's North Locust Point and South Locust Point. The big piles of salt here outside of my office are at North Locust Point. They're used to go on the roads in wintertime. And what else? I don't know.
Well, just by giving us a sense of what comes in where, I feel more connected globally to communities that depend on what's coming from here, and then knowing, of course, that things that arrive here that we need or want.
Yeah. One place that I always try to point out is Lazaretto Point, Ruckert Terminal. The ships that dock there are right over top of the Fort McHenry Tunnel. So if you go through the tunnel and there's a ship there, you're going directly underneath of it.
So Lazaretto, like the origin of that word, aren't those the places where plague victims would be sent?
I don't know, quite possibly.
So. Like Lazarus. I think it's so biblical. Yeah. Anyway,
possibly.
I'm curious now.
There is a quarantine road where ships were quarantined when they first came in. That's over near Hawkins Point. So when ships were first coming in and they had to be checked for disease, they would stop there.
Good. Good history. Good history, good current events. Thank you so much, Josh.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.